Okay, I'm visiting my friend John, who's got a lovely woodworking shop, and he's going to help me stabilize some pieces of wood. Hey John, how you doing?
Hey Mike, good morning and welcome to my shop again.
All right. So we're going to do some stabilizing today, huh?
Yep.
All right.
Glad to show you how I do it, and like most things, there's various ways you can do it. I'll just show you how I do it.
Great. John is the one that got me started on woodworking in general years ago with a club that he had organized, and specifically got me interested in wood turning. So it's been a journey of a number of years. So let's do a quick walk around, John, and kind of look at your shop.
Before you do that, most people would never believe that at one point you told me when I was trying to introduce you to turning, at one point you said, I don't think I'll ever be interested in that.
Yeah.
You've got to
Never say never.
Yeah.
Okay, John does a wide variety of woodworking, and he does a lot of renovating and restoration. He does some veneering, and he's got a vacuum bag and a vacuum pump for the required stabilization, and he's got all his little scraps of wood, and he goes out and does a lot of tool shopping for estate sales and keeps upgrading his shop. So he's over here in the corner is his wood turning setup project that in the works looks like, his bandsaw and his scroll saw and jointer and belt sander and part of his vacuum system and his ultra safe saw stop table saw. And his shop used to be belonged to an automobile guy who did restored old automobiles, so he's got these nice roll-up doors on at least two sides. All right, so let's get started on stabilizing. Here's an example of one piece of stabilized wood. This is stabilized hackberry. It's a 20 threads per inch little box a friend of mine had given me, and so I want to do something similar by using spalted wood. And spalted wood generally is too punky to thread of any kind, so by stabilizing it with a resin, I'm hoping to come up with a product that will I'll be able to thread. But I also want to make some shaving brush handles. Okay, here are a couple of items to be used. This is the resin. This one happens to be a stick fast, but there's a couple of different cactus juices and other similar stabilizing resins on the market. You can get on Amazon, or you can get from specialty vendors, and they're all somewhere. It's not inexpensive. They're all somewhere in the vicinity of about $100, and depends on whether there's shipping involved. Then John uses these glasses to primarily put pen blanks in, so that's a good size for that. And then he uses a variety of different weights to put on the wood that would otherwise float, to keep it down into the resin during the process of when it's in a vacuum chamber. All right, here's the wood I'm going to be stabilizing. I've got a couple of pieces of ambonia burl that's very dense, so we don't know how much it'll take. I've got some that I'm going to turn into boxes, so I've already hollowed it out. A couple of pieces I'm going to make shaving brushes out of, and I hollowed them out because this resin will only go so deep into a product, and you don't want to waste it. So I went ahead and hollowed the boxes because I wanted that resin to get all in around the edge where I'm going to wind up threading. Okay, so I've put the pieces of wood into these three glasses that we're going to put inside the chamber, and John's going to pour a little of his stabilizing resin in it until it just covers the wood, and then we're going to put a weight in it to keep it submerged. And he's got these little washers for smaller items, and he's got some larger plates for items.
that covering the wood good?
Looks like it.
Yeah. Mike, if you can get up close to me, you can already see this is bubbling.
Now you can see the air bubbles being displaced in the wood, being displaced by this stick-fast resin. And this is going to, by vacuuming, putting it in a vacuum, it's going to suck all the air out, and you'll see a lot of bubbling in that process. Okay, now we've put these 3 glasses inside the container, and John is putting this plexiglass top with a seal on it. And the pressure is going to pull it nice and tight. And with a plexiglass top, you can actually see the when the vacuum has done its job and it quits bubbling. The reason we put these smaller containers in there is this resin, as we mentioned, is about $100 a gallon. So you don't want to waste it. You don't want to try to fill up the pot and have to do the cleanup also. Having it in smaller containers reduces the waste. Now any leftover resin can always be poured back and reused because it doesn't set up until it's been heated. And we can see here the foam from all the air bubbles that are being, because of that vacuum, it's sucking all the air out. This is why you have this lid on it to kind of monitor the froth, because you can, if you've got it near the top of your containment vessel, you want to regulate the pressure a little bit so it doesn't spill over.
And it right now is up to about 22.
Okay, 20.
And 27 is the atmospheric pressure.
Yeah, 22. That's inches of mercury. Is that right? Yeah. And I think the theoretical theoretical max is 29. So anything probably over about 22 is good, and it depends on your altitude as well. So you can use different strength pumps. This little Robinair on the bottom is what John uses for his vacuum bags for his veneering. But what we're using now is contained in here. It's a gas pump, probably about 1/3 horsepower. That's the one that's used for John's vacuum chuck, and is similar to the gas that I use for my vacuum chuck. So I think the kind of size pump is not all that critical, and it doesn't have to be a very large pump. Okay, so here's the other components. When we pull the wood out of the vacuum chamber, we're going to wrap them in this aluminum foil and then put them in this little basic toaster oven and cook them for, depends on the size of the wood pieces, but I understand maybe 10 minutes to 30 minutes to actually do the stabilization. So this was John's first pot that he actually made from a clear plexiglass or acrylic cookie jar pot from Bed Bath & Beyond. I can measure this. It's not. It's only about 1/4 of an inch. I'm surprised it was strong enough. It's got a seal though, and he drilled a couple of holes to put his gauge and hose connection on it, but it already had this strapping locking mechanism on it.
I didn't measure this lid, but I would say it's about 8 inches. So with a 17 to say 27 inches of mercury on that size, you're looking at anywhere getting easily up to past 600 pounds per square inch. So I would try to get something a little bit stronger than this 1/4 inch vessel.
So the thickness of this plexiglass top, I've measured it. It's 7/16, just a bit below a 1/2 inch, and that compares to the less than a 1/4 inch on that Bed Bath & Beyond, which I'm surprised it would withstand the pressures.
Pull these things out, and you hold the tinfoil, and let me
Okay.
just put it in the tinfoil in your hand. All right, you ready for a real one?
I'm ready.
A piece of wood. All right, just wrap it up.
And just, twist it over.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay.
You're probably doing it 10 times more carefully than I would. But I know that about you.
Yeah. of my deliberate nature.
Yeah. You know, like we've talked about chiseled bevel angles and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
I made the remark, you know, good enough is good enough for me.
Yep.
And you'd never say good enough is good enough, would you?
Yeah, I would.
And I don't know if this resin is toxic or anything like that.
I'm saying it cleans
I don't
up
like
with
it on
soap,
my-
it cleans up with soap and water, and I think it's probably a good idea to always be wearing gloves on almost everything, because you never know. The nitrile would protect you almost anything, but there are some solvents. You gotta know what your solvent is, because there are some things that'll go through nitrile. And you need that. Is that all? Yep. All right, so we gotta figure out how to stay.
All right, I usually do pin blanks 20 minutes. I'm gonna do close to 30 on this. And let's see, I'm gonna do about 200.
So talking about good enough, I've heard in other people YouTube videos, some people talking about that 200 is very, very critical, and these ovens have a wide variation. They might be cooking at 170, or they might be cooking at 220, and that may make a difference. But this may be good enough. We'll see. Okay, we're pouring the excess resin right back into the container, because it requires heat to cure, so the excess can be reused. Okay, time to get these potatoes out of the oven.
You want the big one first, small one first? What's your pleasure?
Just grab one, and we'll see what we got. Okay. Step aside just a little bit. There we go. We've taken it out of the oven. It's had the stabilizing fluid in it. You can see some shine on it, the acrylic. And when it's done, should be no liquid dripping, and you should see some crystallization. You may get chunks in the bottom or inside if you haul it out like this, but it ought to be shiny with no liquid. Here's another piece of stabilized sycamore. I'm going to turn into it's a box blank. I'm going to turn it into the bottom of an acorn box. And if you look down inside, you can see the resin, which is crystallized. That was probably a frothy mix, and it dried up. Now the challenge is, how do I put a tenon on here, is how do I get it back on a tenon? I marked the center, but I can't tell exactly where it is. So what I thought I would do is I would take this chuck with these pin jaws and see if I couldn't just slip this over it and square it up enough to clean up the tenon. Ah, there we go. I think that'll work. Now I just need to snug it down just a little bit. And it doesn't need to be too terribly tight, mostly enough to find the center back here. Let's bring up the center. Wow, that's hard. I'm going to clean this up and retrue that tenon. I'm going to use a spindle gouge with a shear, riding the bevel, and see if I can't clean this surface up a little. Now, I'm not getting shavings, I'm just getting dust. I'm I'm getting a nice surface and it's cleaned up. Got to go a little bit more to clean this up. I think that's probably good enough for right now.